Welcome to another episode of The Brand Called You, a video and podcast show that brings you leadership lessons, knowledge, experience, and wisdom from hundreds of successful individuals from around the world. Today, it is my privilege to welcome a very accomplished individual who's giving back so much to society, Sujata Sahu. Sujata, welcome to the show.
Hi, thank you so much for having me on the show.
Thank you. Sujata is the founder and CEO of 17,000 Feet Foundation. She is dedicated to transforming the lives of children and communities in the remote and inaccessible villages of the Himalayas. She's led large technology teams in India and America, and obviously this was in a previous avatar. And she's also the winner of the Nari Shakti Puraskar in 2015. That's quite an accomplishment, Sujata. So
Thank
tell
you.
me, what would you say are three key milestones in your career or life?
Oh, wow. Entire life? It's a good question. Three key milestones. One was, I would say, my first job, getting out of college and getting my first job. I think for anyone coming out of college, that first job is you give it everything.
Correct.
So I was part of the IT sector. I've worked here and in the US for many years. I worked for a company, then it was called Citicorp Software, and now it's Oracle. Yeah, that was, you were out there and a young kid just out of my post-graduation, out to conquer the world and prove something. That was a great milestone for me, that it launched me from a student to somebody with a little larger vision. The second milestone was, I would say, in my career, having to quit my IT career.
Okay.
After almost 15 years of working in India and in the US, and actually moving back from the US to India. That was a very big move for me. It was a conscious decision. It was something I've always wanted to do. I love being in the US. I did 9 years there, but India is home for me.
Correct.
So that was a big milestone, simply because I felt the 15 years I had in IT was great. I learned a lot, traveled a lot of experience, but it was a turning point in my life where I said, let me stop and see what it is that I want to do going forward. So that was a big one. And the third largest milestone is what I'm doing today. It was a chance movement. I was trekking out in Ladakh. I was on a solo trek. I came back to India and I taught at a school. I used to run trekking expeditions for children. I'm a trekker. I love doing that. I love being with kids. But it was a chance solo trek in Ladakh where I stumbled and I had this, it was almost an epiphanic moment for me, where I saw the lives of people in very remote areas of Ladakh, and I started 17,000 feet. So from going from, to being in the corporate sector to being an entrepreneur, a social entrepreneur, that was a really big moment for me. And yeah, it's been 10 years now that I've launched 17,000 feet. So yeah, that's three
Fantastic.
very large milestones. It's right out there.
I agree. And, so let's start talking a little bit about 17,000 feet. Tell me about this venture and what motivated you to start it.
So like I said, when I moved back from US to India, I'd spent 9 years there. Life is different out there. When you come back to India, everything started looking a lot different. It's different when you're here and you take life for granted. But when you've seen a different side of life and you come back and you realize there's so many things in India that, which we had taken for granted, and things that could possibly be better and where I could use my time. So I got involved in a few social initiatives, but nothing had prepared me for what I saw when I went into Ladakh. I went on a solo trek in 2010 to Ladakh, and I really had absolutely no idea about Ladakh at that point. It wasn't as popular a tourist destination as it is today. And I was in this really remote village which had one home. It's interesting, just one home, and the nearest village is another 3-4 hours away. And here I'm thinking, it took me a day to reach there. So I had to drive for a few hours, trek for a day, and I reached there. And I'm sitting there wondering, how do I not know anything about this place? And that one home had just 4 or 5 occupants, a couple of goats, and that was it. I check further, I reach another village after 2-day walk, after another day's walk, and there's a little tiny school which had 5 or 7 children. That's it. The entire school had that many kids, and there was a teacher there. And it's sort of surreal, Ashutosh. I can't make it in any other way. Here, I live in Gurgaon. I go to this place, middle of the mountains, altitudes. That altitude was probably around 13,000 feet. Difficulty breathing, and all I see is a little school with 5 or 7 kids and a teacher, very committed. Textbooks are in English. And I'm wondering, how do these children even understand what's going on in the real world? There are no roads to reach there, no telephones, no electricity, no television. And that kind of put so many things into perspective. Looking at where I come from, and at that point I was teaching in a very great school here in Gurgaon. I was a teacher teaching math and computer science, and here I go into the school. That I spent a couple of days there, talked to the children, the teacher. I remember this headmaster asking me, he was telling me about his life. He comes from another village, which is a 2-day walk from where he's at. And so he leaves his family, comes, stays there. And he was telling me about how he hasn't seen his family for a while. He hasn't seen basic vegetables for quite a while. He's asking me, he says, so since I was trekking, I had supplies for about 7 or 8 days. I was carrying it on horseback. And he said, do you have tomatoes? I haven't seen tomatoes in a long time. So nothing really grows there. This precious little. So he said, I have a bottle, I have a can of Nescafe, I can trade it with you.
Okay.
So I said, keep the Nescafe, take the tomatoes. I had some noodles, I cooked and I fed the whole school. I mean, have you ever fed an entire school? I did.
Wow.
The entire school of 5 to 7 kids.
Wow.
So that got me thinking on, how India really is, and how there are parts of India which I know nothing about, and I'm sure most of us don't know.
Correct.
And that got me really fired up. So this is how it got started. I came back. I also felt very ill at that trek. So the entire experience was really brought home to life how communities struggle in that high altitudes. Temperatures go down to minus 50 degrees. So I came back and I was really fired up. It took me a year and a half to set something up, but that was the start of my 17,000 feet journey. It's like, how do I improve the lives of these communities, and how do I give these children, what our children have? Why don't they have access to what our kids have in our schools?
Very true.
So, yeah.
And once you took a decision to start off 17,000 feet after a year and a half, talk to me about some of the challenges that you faced in being able to start getting an organization off the ground to support all the families there.
Yeah, that's an interesting question. So I've never been an entrepreneur. So I've always been in the service industry. Coming back with an idea saying I want to change the world, it's great. I mean, but it's just an idea, right? When you start sitting down together and thinking about it, that's when you start realizing sometimes the challenges were they seem unsurmountable. So to start with, what is it that I wanted to do? Even to articulate what I wanted to do took me a lot of time. I just came with this passion saying, we can change the education system, build another school. It started with a build another school idea. And when I sat down and I realized, I saw one village with 7 kids, but there are actually a few hundred, there's 700 odd hamlets in the entire Ladakh. As I sat down and I realized is that what I went in with was a preconceived notion that I know better, I can do better. So the first thing I had to do, the challenge, was get that thought off my head.
Correct.
I don't know better. I have to first understand what the people are, what they want, what are the realities of the system. So that was the first challenge I had. I took a lot of time reading about Ladakh, about the local communities, reading about what other people do, how do you improve education. That in itself was a problem. The second thing I realized was there were not that many non-for-profits working there. Okay. What that meant is they were non-profits, they were all local, they were localized to areas which are accessible, where there were telephones, but none in these areas which are so disconnected. And that proved to be a barrier. There was nobody for me to learn from. There was nobody for me. And then I realized I want to work in an area which is no electricity, no connectivity, no roads, temperatures going down to minus 50 and altitudes upward of 9,000 feet. How do you do this? How do you transport anything? How do you train teachers? What do you do? So that became a huge challenge for me. So the third thing was, how will I get funding for this? I knocked on many doors. They were like, Ladakh, seriously? We have enough problems here in Haryana, Gurgaon and Bangalore. So that was the third. The fourth was, getting a team together. I couldn't do this alone. So I roped in my husband. Actually speaking, he was the one who pushed me to do the solo trek in the first place.
Okay.
He's been trekking in Ladakh for a very, very long time, much longer than I have. And he pushed me to go there and he said, go see it and do a solo trek. That's the only way you'll understand the reality of the region. So I said, look, you got me onto this, now you better get onto this. So the team, what we then realized was we need local people. And we also have a very close Ladakhi friend who's part of the founding member. So the three of us got together. I kept pushing and I said, so the idea was first to not, what I realized was I couldn't go on with preconceived ideas. So I said a couple of things. One is understand as much as you can about this sector, understand as much as you can about Ladakh in general, have a team of local Ladakhis. And that is now part of our mandate to also give jobs to Ladakhis. So put a team together. Most of Ladakhis didn't even know about the villages I was talking about.
Wow.
So I put a team together, and the third was funding. Funding has always been a challenge, right? Funding, it is a challenge even today, but funding, we put in our own funding to start with. And I'll tell you how we overcame this actually. So the first thing was getting a model. What is it that you really want to do, right? So we realized that there was a reason why Ladakh was the way it was. These communities are very sparsely populated. It's easy for us to say, why don't they move to the city? It's easy for us to say, but this is their ancestral land. This is where they live and they grow. It's easy for us to say it. So we realized that whatever we need to do within the communities and not try and put in one of our own solutions, right? So our model became that whatever we were trying to achieve had to be achieved right at the village community within their existing resources, which is great. The second thing we realized was that there is a lot of non-profits who've already done great work on education, and there was no reason for me to reinvent the wheel.
Correct.
So I went out to a lot of non-profits and I said, let me know what you guys have done. Can you share knowledge, share pedagogy, curriculum? And there were a lot of great non-profits, Pratham and Akshara Foundation, who said, here, take this and run with it. And that was great. And funding, we did something interesting. We realized that we can't do this alone. So we said we need to get individuals on this, or we need to get other people to speak about the remote areas. So we said, why don't we give them a reason to come to this remote part of Ladakh? Okay. So we started encouraging people, come to Ladakh and volunteer. Spend a few days in a remote village, go back and talk about us.
Wow.
Be our brand ambassadors. And that's kind of built our following. So that's still the model that we take. We work with a lot of non-profits. We use what we have. We collaborate. And our funder base, our donor base, as well as our supporter base grows through visits. We encourage them to come, spend some time there. And
so tell me.
The other challenge was family acceptance, of course.
Okay. Family acceptance, you said, is it?
It's putting your own funding and going into a social enterprise.
Correct.
But once they saw the commitment, they backed off.
And then what about the families that you work with? Do they accept external inputs easily?
So that's exactly why I said. So that is why our team is largely Ladakhi. That is why we spent almost a year understanding what they want rather than what we can give. That's really, really critical. There is a reason. There's a beautiful way that Ladakhis live. They live off the land. They're very community driven. They help each other. And that's great. Our intention is not to change anything at all. It's just to help them improve what they already have. So how 17,000 feet works is very simple. We're not setting up schools. We're not bringing in teachers from outside. We do none of the above. What I do is we realize that Ladakh already has 1,000 schools. Even if the school has 5 kids, it's a government school, which means the government has tried its best. For 5 children, 2 teachers, a government school, it's amazing.
Wow.
So the only thing that government school needs is support. So we work with existing systems. If there is a school, we support the school, we support the teachers, upgrade the school, give them better facilities, train the teachers. That's what we do. So we make the community a very strong part of our initiatives. Since they contribute so much, they accept it a lot more. I think one of the key things that we've done well is we chose the remotest of the villages to start with. The place where nobody is gone, where no tourists go, where even administrative officials find it difficult because, well, it's difficult. 3-day work, over mountain passes. Since we chose the remotest areas for the local communities themselves, it was quite a bit of a wonder that, people from outside are taking the time to come and know about their community. So that's really helped.
Okay. So, you've been doing a lot of work in Ladakh, but is the scenario similar across the entire Himalayan region?
So yes, Ashutosh, there are a lot of similarities, and I'll tell you something right off the bat. 17,000 feet, we named it so that we wanted to work in these high altitude mountain regions because of the similarities there. So mountain communities are largely fairly resilient. I mean, they've lived off the land, they live as close communities together. But their basic aspiration is better education, better jobs, better healthcare. They are where we were, 50, 60 years ago. They don't want to leave the land. They prefer living where they are. They prefer living in that city. Life's very tough for them. But the problems here are the same across the mountain region. If you look at it, the reason for migration, one of the largest reasons for migration is good education. Young children migrate very, very, very early. Obviously, children migrate for jobs. Youngsters migrate for jobs.
Correct.
But most of them want to go back. A lot of them feel out of place in the cities and they want to go back. So, yes, their lifestyle is different. The problems are largely similar. So that's why, we have in fact set our sights on Sikkim next, or Arunachal Pradesh. These are two places we are looking at.
Okay.
Similar problems. And they obviously live in tough terrain. So they're largely way more resilient people by themselves. They're able to take a lot more than you and I can ever handle.
Wow. Okay.
So, yeah.
And you basically a technology person, and I know that you are using technology to improve the lives of the children by giving them better access, to education. My question to you is, Sujata, how easy is it to access technology in such far-flung areas?
Oh God, that is a tough one. I told you, right? Our villages don't have electricity, mobile connectivity. You won't believe this, Ashutosh. We actually, even in my offices, so we have an office in Leh and Kargil, we've been dictating Excel sheets on the phone, so you couldn't communicate things. I mean, it's a lot better now. My main office in the main city, it's a lot better. But in the remote villages, there still is a problem. People get electricity for 3 hours in the night. That's it. Mobile, there are still about 60% of the villages of Ladakh don't have basic mobile connectivity. I'm talking even 2G. They have a satellite landline, which is in the middle of the village, and it's used for emergencies. And let me tell you, what they mean as emergency and what we mean as emergency, totally different things.
Correct.
For them, emergencies are life and death and health emergencies.
Right.
So, reaching technology is a big thing and very difficult. So being a techie person, like you rightly said, my first idea was, let's get digital, let's give them tablets, let's give them computers. And I sat back and I said, I'm not going to start and, change the way they're doing things. There's a great way the teachers are already teaching. So we introduced technology much later. In fact, we introduced technology about in 2018, December. And in fact, that's proving to be a huge boon today during COVID lockdowns. So what we did was follow. We said we need to give them a solution which does not depend on electricity or the presence of mobile connectivity. We needed to have a way for the children to learn better, the teachers to have access to more rich resources for them to teach, as well as a way for the administrative officials, education officials to actually understand what's going on. So there needed to be a feedback, a communication between, the main offices and each of the villages. So here's what we did, and this is where my techie background helped. So we looked at all the solutions that were in the market, all the learning solutions in the tablet. We said we needed something which was low power. First of all, we realized that we have to give them that source of power. Since there is no electricity, so solar was the best idea for us. Ladakh has 360 days of sunshine. So we said, okay, the solution needs to have its own power source. So our solution has a solar power battery. A battery needs to withstand minus 50 degrees centigrade. So we did a gel battery with the great enclosure so that it withstands that. Now we said, let's make it a tablet-based solution because it takes so little power. But the tablet-based solution was offline. It had to be offline. There's no way they could connect to the internet. But offline was great. The child could learn, but there was no way for a headmaster or an official sitting in the main town to understand what's going on. So we actually put a little server in the school. So the server became that really a hyper local internet, if you will. The server fulfilled the role of the internet.
Wow.
It connected to all the tablets. It stores all the information of what each child is reading, how much he's learned, his performance and his scores. And we said, there's one last thing. We said, okay, so there's a server which has all the information. So the headmaster can see what's going on. But how do I, sitting here in Gurgaon, or a sponsor in Bombay, or the education officials in the main town, how do they have access to this data? So here's one thing we did. We said the headmaster, he travels from his school to the zonal office once a month anyway. He has to go for midday meal supplies, uniforms, textbooks, filling in attendance records. So we said, why not use a system that already works? So we built an app which sits on his phone, his mobile phone. That app connects to the server in the school, extracts the data periodically. When he goes to the office, which is mostly connected, it syncs up the data to the cloud.
Okay.
It also downloads any updates. Our software apps have updates. When he comes back, it gets pushed down. So I have access to data. So what we've done is worked with existing softwares of the market, customized it, build a new architecture, and worked with the fact that teachers move between villages anyway.
Okay.
So we're using that now. And this is actually great because today children are learning at home with these tablets. And despite the fact that there's no electricity or connectivity. So the Ladakh government launched this program. They called it Tablet in Every Hamlet. Children are sitting at home in their backyards with their cows and goats grazing behind and learning during lockdown. So it's been interesting. It's been challenging to do this, but it's helped us innovate. I think the best part I'll tell you about our work is because it's been so challenging, we realized how innovative it needed to be. And it's kept us on our toes.
Fantastic. So I've got time for one, maybe two more questions. So
Sure.
one is a personal question for you.
Sure.
Technology person, corporate world, high profile individual, now moved into completely different sector and giving back. What does success mean to Sujata?
Oh, in this sector, success means when I'm no longer relevant, when I'm no longer needed. Success is if I can make myself obsolete. That's where success is for me. It is just that.
Okay.
Where I'm here to nudge the system. I'm here to prod it and facilitate a little bit of development. If I see that happening, that's success for me, and I'm very happy being there.
Okay.
So the other thing, if I'm teaching children, success is if I'm learning, if they become the teachers, that's when I feel it's a success. For me, that's where it is. We're looking at a place where we can move from here and say, yes, we've been able to push the system into taking care of itself.
Fantastic. And my last question to you, if there is some people who, after listening to your conversation, want to reach out to you or want to be able to get associated, how do they reach out to you? And if you have a website, what is your website?
Oh, thank you for asking that question. So so my website is www.17000ft. That's 17000, F for Frank, T for Tango.org. So go on to the website, or you can send me an email from there. My email ID is on the website as well. So reach out to me there. But I'll tell you something. I say, if you want to reach out, one of the biggest things I'd say, come be a volunteer with us in Ladakh. When travel opens up post-COVID and it's safe for everyone to travel, I encourage you to come. We have something called volunteer tourism. So I know a lot of you want to visit Ladakh. Come here and you can be a tourist, but I'm giving you a chance to go to remoter villages where you can stay and contribute to the income of those villages. And in doing so, also help us set up our libraries, help us run these digital workshops. We pay school. So help us do that. That's a great way to get associated. And yes, donations are always welcome. It's all there on the website. So I look forward to that. And that invitation goes out to you too. Please come spend 10 days with us in Ladakh and stay in these beautiful remote villages which have some amazing people there.
No, you've convinced me. I mean, whenever weather permits and travel permits, I will certainly be there. And my wife is an educator, and I'm sure she will want to come as well. So, but
look forward to that.
Thank you. And so Sujata, thank you so much. It's been such a pleasure speaking to you. I wish you and 17,000 feet lots of success.
Thank you so much for having me. I love what you're doing, and more power to you too. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you for listening to the Brand Called You videocast and podcast, a platform that brings you knowledge, experience, and wisdom of hundreds of successful individuals from around the world. Do visit our website www.tbcy.in to watch and listen to the stories of many more individuals. You can also follow us on YouTube, Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter. Just search for the Brand Called You.